The Pokemon scholar and hip-hop visionary Jaywitz once devastated his lyrical opponent by claiming they did not have the weather balls for success. Fortunately, that doesn't apply to us, as whether you're ready or not, yeah, get it, weather, Castform is up next. Those who played Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, as well as their remix, will remember the excitement of obtaining one after a hard-fought slog against Team Magma or Aqua in the Weather Institute, as well as the immense cool factor that comes with Castform's unique ability, Forecast, that lets it change form depending on the weather, besides sandstorms, much to the disappointment of those of us who took it into the desert on Route 111, or better yet, those of us who sent it out under Shadow Sky in Pokemon XD. Today we're going to examine how this weather ball, get it, weather ball, performed in the competitive scene, and so we ask, how good was Castform actually? And in this video we'll be going over these competitive formats. If Pokemon's viability was related to the creativity of their design, Castform would be a solid OU with a small niche in Ubers. Sadly, that is not the case, to the chagrin of wishy-washy fans everywhere, and as such, Castform is one of the worst Pokemon in the game. If Glalie stat spread of base 80 across the board was mediocre, just imagine base 70. That is base 70 on a Pokemon that is completely useless before weather is set up. Talk about being under the weather. Of course, thanks to its perfectly meager stat spread, Castform wasn't worth much even with weather active, regardless of form. Its amazing coverage moves didn't do it any favors either. It was too weak, too slow, and too frail to leave any sort of meaningful impact, even all the way down in NU, which was particularly cruel because several other Pokemon pulled off rain and sun strategies quite effectively. Pokemon like Huntail and Blossom turned into some of the most dangerous threats around under their respective weathers. Castform did not, and as such was not worth the effort. What would have been cool would be if Castform's weather-reliant forms received stat boosts of some kind, but sadly that was not what happened, and as such Castform was never used, even in the never used tier of its debut generation. NU was once again beyond Castform's reach. Extending manual weather duration through the newly added Damp Rock and Heat Rock did nothing for it, and nor did the automatic permanent hail setting of Snover while it was allowed in the tier. NU still had weather strategies aplenty, especially sun, but still managed to, well, not rain on Castform's parade, but definitely ruin its parade and rub its face in how ruined it was. Castform's one moment of glory, if it can be called that, came with the release of Pokemon Platinum, when a switching Pokemon was KO'd by Pursuit, while Weather, Trick Room, Gravity, or Uproar was active, it would trigger a glitch called Acid Rain, which was wild. Multiple weather effects would become active at the same time. If Castform was sent out under Acid Rain, it would change back and forth between its sun and rain forms forever. Literally, the game would not end. Someone's DS or internet would have to be turned off. Now, this never happened in a battle anyone really cared about, as nobody would ever actually want to use Castform, but it was pretty hilarious that it existed. Anyway, all Castform needed to become viable was for sun to be permanent, and thus it found an excellent niche in DPP Ubers. When supported by Groudon, Castform fired off brutal Choice Specs weather balls that mowed down neutral targets like Dialga, while fire resists like Kyogre and Latitwins were destroyed by Thunder and Ice Beam, respectively. Sometimes Castform's base 70 special attack came up just short of a KO, but that was nothing hazard support from Deoxyspeed couldn't fix. And oh, we're just kidding, that's not what happened. Pretty sure you knew that. Castform succeeding in Ubers, what a goofy idea. After all, Rayquaza and its airlock were far too prominent for Castform's weather-reliant antics to ever be consistent. As part of Game Freak's haha let's laugh at how bad and stupid Castform is initiative, Generation 5 introduced Drought Ninetales and Drizzle Politoed. Now, as a tool for making Castform feel even more left out of the party, this was highly successful, and came with the extra twist of the knife that was Vulpix getting Drought as well, as dreamed up by one particularly sadistic Game Freak employee who really wanted to punch Castform's many weather-dependent faces. Competitive players quickly caught on to Game Freak's way of thinking in the section of Castform's Smogon analysis that instructs players how to check or counter it. Among the listed methods is to, quote, mercilessly mock and taunt the trainer who sent out Castform, end quote, until they forfeit out of embarrassment. This is interesting, as when most players use such a bottom-of-the-barrel Pokemon, they are hoping to make their opponent laugh so hard that they'll time out before they can move. Alternatively, they might be using the Beautifly Gambit, otherwise known as trying to ugly the other player to death. However, using Castform has the opposite effect. It basically enrages the other player into furiously screaming at and belittling you until you you throw your computer or phone out the window, just to get away from the relentless tirade of abuse that makes the rants from Whiplash look gentle. This is a warning for the sake of the player base's mental health. Remember, you matter, and thus do not use Castform, lest you get fooled into thinking you don't by someone blinded, enraged, and perplexed by Castform's lack of competitive viability, and your choice to use it anyway. If Smogan really cared about their player base's well-being, they'd ban Castform for this reason, but we have to take what we can get. Anyway, Castform was hella unviable even in NU because it didn't beat anything at all, even with weather active, and became untiered as a result. Its greatest contribution was reminding you that you should reach out for help if you need it. After all, Pokemon is just a game, but you have a life to live, and you should not ruin it by using Castform. You deserve joy in your life. Use something awesome like Latios and spam Draco Meteor instead. Someone at Game Freak took pity on Castform by changing weather abilities to no longer induce permanent weather in Generation 6, and that person was made to do their boss's laundry for a year as punishment, choosing that over the extreme alternate punishment of using Castform in a battle just once. The rest of Game Freak swore vengeance and thus chose not to give Castform an amazing Mega form that was only active in double battles alongside Primal Groudon or Primal Kyogre, or Mega Abomasnow, yeah. That would have been incredible, and while we're at it, maybe it could have fused with Mega Rayquaza. Sadly, some people just hate good ideas, and those people often happen to be in charge. Those same people chose to give Castform an ability called Forecast, an ability that, as far as we can tell, has no capability for weather prediction, so don't accept it just because it comes from on high. Demand justice for Mega Primal Rayquaza Castform. Anyway, Gen 6 brought about a new lowest tier in PU, which was another opportunity for Castform to show how unique it was. Most bad Pokemon needed PU to come into existence a generation or two earlier to have any shot at any viability, but Castform never would have been able to fit into PU. Now that is truly impressively terrible. In a twist ending rivaling that of your favorite mind-bending movie, Castform was actually used in a serious PU tournament battle once. Plot twist number 2, you believed it, you were fooled. Castform's been untiered this whole time. Beat that, Christopher Nolan. Generation 7 Z moves changed everything. With Z Rain Dance, Castform could boost its speed and set up rain for itself and fall to untiered. Yeah, that happened again. Here's how we would have made Castform awesome in Generation 7. First, it gets Rock-type Sandstorm form. It still has base 70 stats, but you'll soon agree that that's necessary for balance. Then it should have gotten its own Z move. Let's call it Light That Weathers the Weather, that summoned all 4 weathers at once, and the sun and rain are the kind that can't be removed with other weather moves, like those from Primal Groudon and Kyogre. Castform would then transform into one gigantic mismatch of all 4 weather forms, a fire, water, ice, rock type. Its base stat total would be that of each weather form's base stat total combined. What's that? Base 70 across the board? 70 times 4 is 280. That's a base stat total of 1680. Well, look at that. Eternamax Eternatus doesn't look so impressive anymore, does it? Bow down before Eterna Giganta Dynamax Castform, whose weather ball is, of course, all 4 types of its new form, meaning it also gets quadruple stab, and it's also 400 base power because it's all 4 weather balls in one. And the fire and water weather balls are of course boosted by the sun and rain. And if someone can come up with a strategy to counter this Castform once it is already set up, assuming it didn't take damage or status or anything while setting up, you'll win a fabulous prize. Ubers allowed. Bonus points if your strategy does not include the following: Airlock or Cloud9, and the combination of Focus Sash and a phasing move or Mirror Coat. Anyway, what actually happened in Generation 7 was that Castform was too awful for PU once again and dropped to untiered. But this is just so much more interesting than how Castform's only purpose was to run a joke set with 3 weather moves and Weather Ball, and it's just so boring and who cares. Eterna Giganta Dynamax Castform rules. The Z move triggers the Dynamax in a wonderful combination of Generation 7 and 8. Castform is so powerful it created a half generation, so on and so forth. And that's it. So how bad was Castform actually? Well, it was in fact one of the worst Pokemon ever, and it's surprisingly bland for a Pokemon with so many different forms, because it's the same problem every time. Not only does it need weather to be worth anything, it winds up not being worth anything even with weather. Its most significant competitive contribution was providing endless games in a Generation 4 Wi-Fi battles in one of the greatest glitches of all time. A glitch sadly not adopted by battle simulators because serious players are too good or something. Of course, competitive success isn't all that matters. Castform serves as a good reminder to take care of your mental health, and what better way to do something for your mental health than coming up with ways to counter Eterna Giganta Dynamax Castform. We await your responses, though we don't actually have a prize. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Castform? I mean, how would you counter Eterna Giganta Dynamax Castform? Whatever you think of, leave it in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and to everyone else watching as well. and follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.